Hello everyone, this video is about the Hela class ships. Stay tuned till the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. The SMS Hela was a unique ship. She was built for the German Imperial Navy in the late 18th century. This was a time of rapid technological advancement in naval warfare. Germany needed a fast and modern scout ship. The Hela was their answer. SMS Hela was an Aviso for the German Kaiserliche Marine in the mid-1890s, the last vessel of that type to be built by the German Empire. As the culmination of the type in German service, she represented significant improvements over earlier vessels, particularly the Wacht and Meteor classes, which had been disappointments in their service. I mean, like, major disappointments. They failed miserably. They should try harder. She was intended to serve as a fleet scout and flotilla leader for torpedo boats. Hela, named for the schooner Hela of 1852's vintage, she was a culmination in the development of the Aviso type in the German fleet. The Avisos were developed from earlier torpedo boats and were intended for use in home waters with the fleet, both as flotilla leaders to direct groups of torpedo boats and as scouts for the main fleet's capital ships. The first Aviso, Zeton, was purchased from a British shipbuilder in 1875. 7 more ships were built in German shipyards by the early 1890s. Of these, the last 4 vessels, comprising the Wacht and Meteor classes, had proved to be significant disappointments in their service, owing to their poor seaworthiness and insufficient speed. In 1893, the Naval Construction Staff prepared a design for a new vessel, provisionally designated H, which remedied the problems of the earlier vessels, in part through a significant increase in size. This ship became Hela. The Aviso type culminated in what would be later referred to as the light cruiser. German designers incorporated the best aspects of Hela's design, primarily a high top speed and an armored deck, with those of their contemporary light unprotected cruisers of the Buzzard class, namely a heavy armament and long cruising radius. This combination resulted in the Gazelle class cruisers, which were the first true light cruisers built in Germany. General characteristics and machinery. Hela was 104.6 meters long at the waterline and 105 meters long overall. She had a beam of 11 meters and a draft of 4.46 meters forward and 4.64 meters aft. She was designed to displace 2,027 tons. And at full load, the displacement increased to 2,082 tons. Her hull was constructed with transverse and longhexagonal steel frames, which contained 22 watertight compartments above the armored deck and 10 below. A double bottom ran for 35% of the length of the hull, which had a pronounced ram bow. The ship had a minimal superstructure with a small combing tower. A raised forecastle deck extended from the stern to the funnel. She was fitted with a pair of light pole masts fitted with spotting tops. Hela's crew consisted of 7 officers and 171 enlisted men, as completed and later increased to 8 officers and 187 enlisted men. She carried a number of smaller boats, including 1 barge, 1 yawl, and 3 dinghies. Later in her career, the barge was exchanged for a picket boat. Hela was very seaworthy, but she rolled badly, having a metacentric height of 0.775 meters and intended to ship a significant amount of water in a head sea because she was significantly bow heavy. A single rudder controlled steering. She had an average maneuverability. 2 3-cylinder triple expansion steam engines powered the ship. It drove a screw propeller that was 3.25 meters in diameter. Each engine had its own engine room. The engines were supplied with steam by 6 locomotive boilers split into 2 boiler rooms, which were ducted into a single funnel amidships. The engines were rated at 6,000 metric horsepower and a top speed of 20 knots, though on trials they reduced a half a knot better. Coal storage amounted to 340 long tons. Range figures for the ship in her original configuration have not survived. Hela was equipped with 3 electrical generators that produced 36 kilowatts at 67 volts. Armament and armor. Hela was armed with a main battery of 4 88cm SKL 30 quick firing guns in individual mounts. They were carried in MPL C-89 mounts with an elevation range of negative 10 to 20 degrees at maximum elevation. The guns could reach targets at 7,300 meters or 24,000 feet. The guns fired 7 kilogram projectiles at a muzzle velocity of 590 meters per second. The guns were provided with a total of 800 rounds for 200 per gun. The rate of fire was theoretically 14 shots per minute, but in practice it was limited to 10 rounds per minute. She also carried 6 5cm SKL 40 quick firing guns, which were mounted in individual torpedo boute or torpedo boat mounts, C-92 mounts. These guns fired a 1.7 kilogram shells at a muzzle velocity of 2,152 feet per second. The maximum elevation for the guns was 20 degrees, which provided a range of 6,180 meters. Shell storage amounted to 1,500 rounds for 300 rounds per gun. Her armament was completed with 3 45cm torpedo tubes. 2 were placed in the deck on the broadside, and the third was submerged in the bow of the ship. These were supplied with a total of 8 torpedoes, which carried a 87.5 kilogram warhead. Their maximum range at 32 knots was 500 meters. When set to 26 knots, their range was increased to 800 meters. Hela was lightly armored. She was protected by an armor deck that was 20 millimeters thick and comprised of steel. The deck sloped on the sides and was slightly increased in thickness to 25 millimeters to provide a measure of protection against direct fire. An armored combing tower was 40 millimeters thick, protected the upstakes from the boilers. Her combing tower was armored with 30 millimeters thick steel on the sides. She was equipped with a cork cofferdams to reduce the ingress of water in the event of hull damage. Modifications. Hela was modernized in 1803 to 1810 at the Kaiserlich in Danzig. The vessel's internal subdivision was improved with 8 additional water tank compartments above the waterline and an extension of the double bottom to cover 39% of the hull. As part of the modifications to her hull, both of the broadside torpedoes were moved to torpedo rooms below the waterline. She also received 8 marine-type water tube boilers in place of her old models, and a second funnel was added. The new boilers produced 5,982 metric horsepower on trials, propelling the ship to the same top speed. Coal storage was increased to 412 tons, which permitted a cruising radius of 3,000 nautical miles at a speed of 12 knots. Both her stern and 88cm guns were removed, and their ammunition allotment was reduced to 156 shells per gun. I mean, you should see the pictures of this ship before and after. This was the ship that was before, and this is a picture of the ship after it was modernized. A pretty big difference, huh? Her aft superstructure was enlarged to provide additional accommodation space. The ship also received a larger bridge. Chapter 2. Service History. The Hela represented a significant leap forward compared to earlier German ships of her type. Previous vessels like the Wacht and Meteor were smaller and slower. They lacked the firepower of the Hela. Hela was laid down in December 1893 at the A.G. Wessler shipyard in Bremen. She was launched on the 28th of March, 1895. And at the ceremony, Vice Admiral Victor Vados, the chief of the North Sea Naval Station, christened the ship. She was moved to the Langdie Kaiserliche Imperial Shipyard in Wilhelmshaven for final fitting out in January 1896. The ship was commissioned for sea trials on the 3rd of May, initially under the command of the Corvette Captain, or KK for short, Corvette Captain, John Stein, though he was replaced by the Captain Lieutenant Karl Schoonfeder in August. Her initial testing was interrupted by damage to her engines, which necessitated her decommissioning in September 19th for repairs. She spent the next year and a half out of service. Hela was recommissioned on the 10th of March 1898 under the command of KK Fritz Schomerich and was assigned to the 1st Squadron to serve as its Aviso. These duties were interrupted on June 14th when Hela was chosen to escort Kaiser Wilhelm II aboard his yacht Kaisersäulen for sailing regatas in Germany, and then a cruise to Norwegian waters in July that included a stop to Hagener Ford. I'm not going to pronounce that. I'm just going to put it in a subtitle. On July 31st, Hela returned to the 1st Squadron before being detached again on September 17th, following the conclusion of the annual fleet maneuvers. She again escorted Kaisersäulen with Wilhelm II and his wife Augusta Victoria aboard, along with the protected cruiser Hera, for a voyage to the eastern Mediterranean Sea. She returned to her unit on December 8th, after which KK Paul Rempold relieved Sommerich. In early 1899, Hela and the rest of the 1st Squadron embarked on a training cruise to the Atlantic. While passing through the English Channel, the ship stopped in Dover, Great Britain, to represent Germany at the celebration for Queen Victoria's 80th birthday on May 1st. In June and July, Hela again escorted Kaisersäulen for his summer cruise to Norway. During the fleet maneuvers in August, she operated with the fleet's scouting unit. During the exercises in the Baltic Sea on August 28th, Hela struck the mole outside, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, and damaged her starboard propeller. She steamed to Kiel for repairs that were completed by September 4th, allowing her to return to the unit for the rest of the maneuvers. In mid-September, she accompanied the Kaisersäulen for a cruise to Sweden, and she and the pre-dreadnought battleship Kaiser Frederick III escorted a cruiser's yacht on a visit to Britain that lasted from November 17th to the 30th. Hela concluded the year with a training cruise with the 1st Squadron in the Danzig in December. Boxer Uprising. Hela spent the first half of 1900 as she had in previous years, conducting training exercises with the fleet. Her routine was interrupted by events in Quang, China, where on June 20th, during the Boxer Uprising, the German ambassador Clemens von Kessler was murdered by Chinese nationalists. The widespread violence among Westerners in China led to a creation of an alliance between Germany and the 7 other great powers, the so-called 8-Nation Alliance: the United Kingdom, Italy, Russia, Austria-Hungary, the United States, France, and Japan. Those soldiers who were in China at the time were too few to defeat the Boxers. In Beijing, there was a force of slightly more than 400 officers and infantry from the armies of the 8 European powers. At the time, the primary German military force in China was the East Asian Squadron, which consisted of the protected cruisers Cruisen Augusta, Hitra, Irene, the unprotected cruiser Griffin, and the gunboats Jaguar and Iritz. There was also a German 500-man detachment in Takao. Combined with the other nations' units, the force numbered some 2,100 men. These men, led by the British Admiral Edward Sawyer attempted to reach Beijing, but were stopped in the Battle of Tegusten. As a result, the Kaiser determined that the expeditionary force would be sent to China to reinforce the East Asian squadron. Hela was assigned to the naval expedition in July 4th, which included the 4 Brandenburg-class battleships sent to China to reinforce the German squadron there. The ships departed Kiel 5 days later and arrived off the coast of China in late August. Haga entered the mouth of the Yangtze and then patrolled the Yellow Sea through the end of September. She contributed a landing party consisting of 4 officers and 74 men to participate in the assault on Chinese fortifications at the Shanghai Pass. The Aviso spent November anchored at the Wushang roadstead, remaining there until mid-December, when she returned to the Yangtze. At the end of the month, she was sent to Shanghai. Hela then returned to the Yangtze in July 1901, stopping in Zhengzhang before returning to Shanghai in February and remaining there until March. At the time, KK Maxim von Spree arrived to take command of the vessel from Rampart. She later visited the German concession at Guangdong before returning to Shanghai at the end of May. While there, she received orders to return to Germany, and KK Justum von Beryl took command of the vessel for the voyage home. On June 1st, she and the rest of the expeditionary force departed to return home, arriving in Wilhelmshaven in August 11th, 1901 to 1913. After returning from China, Hela immediately participated in the annual fleet maneuvers, serving for the duration of the first scouting group, from August 26th to September 19th. She joined the unit again for a voyage to Oslo, Norway, in mid-December, arriving back in Wilhelmshaven on the 16th. She returned to service with the main fleet in 1902, and while on a cruise in the Atlantic in May, she was detached to escort the light cruiser Amazonian, which had been damaged off the Seven Stones light ship. By this time, the German Naval Command had decided that Hela was too weakly armed to serve to be useful as a fleet scout, and so she was sent to the Kaiser Wift in Kiel on October 16th to be modernized for use as a training ship for light guns. While in shipyard, Hela passed from Bredel's command to KK Karl Siemens. The work was completed on December 21st, and she was recommissioned for this duty on January 21st, 1903. But the poor condition of the ship's boilers required further modifications, which were carried out by the Kaiser Licker Wift in Danzig, beginning on April 25th. The Aviso Blitz replaced Hela in her intended role. Some ship location reports in the German archives in the German Federal Military Archive indicate that Hela was in service with the 1st Scout Group from June to September 1903. But the historians Hans Heidband and Albert Rohr and Hans Otto Stanwitz had been unable to locate any official records of her commissioning or decommissioning during this period, nor of who commanded the vessel during this time. No logbook exists in the archives either. According to location reports, the vessel was to have ended this period in Wilhelmshaven, but no records follow for the transfer to Danzig, where it has definitely known that the ship was reconstructed. Heiband, Rodar, and Stanwitz have nevertheless been unable to determine how the mistake continued for several months, or what ship is actually represented in the reports. Hela remained in the shipyard in Danzig until 1910, where she underwent a significant reconstruction. The ship was recommissioned on October 1st and conducted a brief set of sea trials from October 14th to the 18th. The ship was thereafter employed as a fleet tender. While on maneuvers on the night of March 29th to the 30th, 1911, the torpedo boat S-121 inadvertently crossed too closely to the front of Hela, which struck the torpedo boat with her bow. Neither vessel was seriously damaged from the collision. In April, K.K. Theodore Pupin became the ship's captain, serving until October. While the ship's fleet maneuvers in August and September, the Navy conducted a fleet review for the visit of the Austro-Hungarian naval commander, Admiral Rudolf Montesorelli. Hela then carried Montesorelli to visit Wilhelmshaven and the island of Heligoland. The next 2 years passed uneventfully. She was transferred to Kiel on April 1st, 1912. In September, K.K. Karl Wilhelm Wenger took command of the ship. In mid-1913, the Italian Vice Admiral Prince Luigi Amido, hey, Luigi, Duke of the Abruzzi, whatever that name is, visited Germany on May 31st. Then she carried him for a visit to Heligoland, where the fleet was anchored. In September, K.K. Paul Wilhelm relieved Wenger. Wolfram was to be the vessel's last commander. World War II. Following the start of World War I in July 1914, Hela was brought back to active duty and assigned to the 4th Scouting Group. The unit was tasked with supporting the German torpedo boats that formed the outer ring of the coastal scouting patrols of the German Bright. She was modified slightly between August 13th to 16th, having a third 88-centimeter gun installed. Hela was stationed to the northeast of Heligoland, along with the cruiser Stanton. On the 28th of August, British cruisers and destroyers from Heinrich Force surprised and attacked the German patrol line, resulting in the Battle of Heligoland Bright. Hela's commander received reports of the fighting and turned east to reinforce the vessels engaged in the action. While en route, the ship received the contradictory report that stated that the British vessels were retreating, leading frigate Captain Wilhelm to reverse course and return to his assigned location. As a result, she was not engaged in the action. Later that night, she regrouped with the cruisers Kronberg and Redminst to provide cover for the remaining torpedo boats to re-establish the Bright patrol line. 2 weeks later, on the morning of the 13th of September, Hela was attacked 6 nautical miles southwest of Heligoland. The British submarine HMS E9, under the command of the future Admiral Max Hardin. Hela was conducting a training exercise at the time. The area around Heligoland was presumed safe from British submarines. After surfacing, E9 spotted the German cruiser and immediately resubmerged to fire 2 of her torpedoes, one which struck Haga's stern. After 15 minutes, E9 rose to periscope depth to inspect the scene. The British submarine found Hela sinking. Within another 15 minutes, Hela had slipped beneath the waves. Despite the speed at which the ship sank, her entire crew, except for 2 sailors, were rescued by the sea from the U-boat U-18 and one of the coastal patrol vessels. Hela was the first German ship sunk by a British submarine during the war. As a result of her loss, all German ships conducting training exercises were moved to the Baltic Sea to prevent further such sinkings. One of her 88-centimeter guns was retrieved from the wreck and now is preserved at the Fort Kugelbake in Cuxhaven. She was more than just a ship. She was a symbol of German innovation and a proud chapter in their naval history. She was the last of the German Avisos of that time, and she paved the way for future German cruisers. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something. Hit that like button and subscribe for more history videos like this one. Take care.